Good morning. 3 years ago, the then Army Chief, General Bipin Rawat, was appointed the first Chief of Defence Staff of India by the Modi government on 1st January 2020 with a very clear mandate and a charter of duties. Top thing in his charter of duties was the creation of theatre commands in a time frame of 3 years, and those 3 years are over now. During those 3 years, when he was the CDS, his successor, General Naravne, he was the army chief for 2.5 years. And in those 2.5 years, at every occasion, he said that the theatre command is a requirement and the theatre commands are progressing well. He also said repeatedly when asked that the Indian Army is prepared for a two-front war. A bit about Naravne's background. Before becoming the army chief, he was the Eastern Army commander, which means responsible for the theatre against China and hence expected to know the advances in warfare insofar as PLA was concerned. Before that, he was the General Officer commanding Army Training Command and hence an expert on doctrines and war concepts. Now, with this background, and having been the chief for 2.5 years, yesterday at a lecture where the Army Chief General Manoj Pandey was also present, he actually shocked the nation and told the nation that the Indian Army intellectual capabilities were pretty low and the Indian Army was in a complete intellectual mess. I will explain that. At this function, the Army Chief General Manoj Pandey said that theaterization is required and we are working on theaterization. Whereas Naravne said that theaterization is not an end in itself. The charter of these theatre commands has to come from the top. Now, the charter for the theatre commands came from the top. As I said, this was the top job which was given by the government to his predecessor, General Bipin Rawat, who was the CDS. Now, his other statement is absolutely, it is so non-military that it is shocking. He says that theaterization is not an end in itself. It is actually an end in itself and it is the job of the military leadership. Why? Because theaterization is about creating a joint force, period. And why you create a joint force is for optimization of all the war domains that you have. Now, in the case of the Indian Army, as we know, there are only 3 war domains and they are physical war domains. The war domain of the Army, Air Force and Navy, which is not the case with the PLA. The PLA, as Naravne should know because he's been both the chief and the Eastern Army commander, the PLA now operates in 7 war domains. So there are Air Force, Army, Navy. Then there is cyber. In the cyber, they have cyber reconnaissance, cyber fires. Then they have electromagnetic spectrum domain, where again they have the maneuver and the electronic warfare fires. Then they have the space domain. And then they have a new domain which they have created, which is the near space. Now, near space domain is where their hypersonic glide vehicles and the hypersonic cruise missiles, they will operate, and this is the altitude of 20 kilometers to 100 kilometers. Beyond 100 kilometers is the space or outer space as it is called. And these 7 domains basically now they have distributed in 4 battle spaces. So you have the physical battle space as far as PLA is concerned, which is Army, Air Force, Navy space. Then you have the virtual battle space, which is cyber electromagnetic spectrum domain. This is the virtual one. Then you have the information domain, because you need the software networks which connect all the virtual and the physical domains, very critical for the information flow and the data flow. Now, the PLA calls their information domain or software networks operational systems. and the US military calls it battle networks. And then the fourth domain, the fourth battle space is what is now called the cognitive battle space, and perhaps the most important battle space, because when you are weaving so many physical and virtual domains as one whole, then it is not necessary that you choose a particular domain, a particular target with a shooter from the same domain. It is not necessary. You can take on the target. It can be decided by the commander that, look, I will take on this target by a non-kinetic mean, by cyber, by my electronic fires. I will take it on like that. So the long and short is, when you have so many domains, the focus is not on attrition. The focus is on defeating the enemy intellectually and mentally, even before he is physically defeated, and hence it is called the cognitive domain, cognitive battle space. This is the fourth battle space. Now you can well see the comparison, and this is where you need the joint force, because you have to weave together. In other words, when Naravne says that theaterization is not an end in itself, it is an end in itself. The only problem is that if he had studied, and if the Indian military today studies the PLA, they will understand that before you think of theaterization, we have to create more war domains. We have to understand the war domains of the PLA. We have to understand the battle spaces of the PLA and how to take them on. This is what is called putting the cart before the horse, and not what Naravne says. Now, Naravne makes another point, very interesting point. What he says is that the theater commands, he says, the theaterization is not an end. It is only a means to an end, and that end must be specified first in the form of a national defense strategy, which will flow out of a national security strategy. In other words, what he's saying is, please write your national security strategy first. From there, you will have a national defense strategy, and then that will decide whether the theater command should be there or not. See, this is what is called trying to read the Pentagon thinking without understanding what it is all about. Because Modi government, in fact, is the only government which has unsaid, which has actually spelled out a national security strategy and a national defense strategy, which no other government before that has done. And if I as an outsider can understand that, surely General Naravne was the insider for so long. He would have known far more details about it. And this is, I'll just spell out what is the national security strategy and the national defense strategy. First of all, Prime Minister himself says that the era of war is over. He recently said that. What does this mean? This means that no wars with China, full-scale wars with China or with Pakistan. PM Modi has never spoken of a two-front war at all. So, if no wars, then what should the military prepare for? So, the military should prepare for armed and unarmed skirmishes. And this is precisely what NSA Ajit Doval also has said repeatedly on so many occasions. So where is the doubt? So the question is, how do you take on then the Chinese, the PLA? So to take on the Chinese, Prime Minister Modi has put a strategy in place. That is also very clear. And the strategy is to be part of the US Indo-Pacific strategy, which is called military strategy, which is called integrated deterrence. And hence, one of the recently retired foreign secretaries, Vijay Gokhale, said that we should now expect to have an armed coexistence with China. I do not agree with all this, but that is besides the point. The point is that General Naravne should know that this is what the Prime Minister has said. What else do you want? Now, not only that, if there is to be no war, what will the military do? And if the military is only to prepare for an armed and unarmed skirmish, both with Pakistan as well as with China, so what they are supposed to do is what he, at the beginning of his tenure in October 2014, the Prime Minister clearly spelled out. Talking to the Combined Commanders Conference, Prime Minister Modi said that while the threat is known, which is Pakistan, the enemy is invisible. Invisible is terrorist. So you please concentrate on terrorism, fighting terrorism, counter-terrorism. Now, if General Naravane had any doubts, instead of lambasting the army openly in a forum, if he had any doubts during his tenure, he should have sought clarification from the government on all these things. So there is a national, this is being intellectually lazy when you say that there is no national security strategy in writing. Well, India is not a major power. India is a medium power. It is major powers who need to write. Why should India want to write? The Prime Minister has spelled out. So that is my second point. Third point, which is actually very strange. General Naravane says that there is a need to create a higher defense organization with representatives from all ministries for a whole of nation approach to combat. Now, when you say higher defense organization, please mark the word is defense. Now, how can you have in the higher defense organization representative from all the ministries? That is point one. And the higher defense organization is already clear with the CDS at the apex. So what is he talking about? Now, as far as whole of nation approach is concerned, this is the job. What he is talking of, Naravane, to create, how many organizations will you create? What he is talking is create a higher defense organization. No. The interface between the military, the higher defense organization of the military and the civilian ministry is the National Security Advisor. It is another matter that India is doing nothing about the war which will be there, what I call the war zone, which will be the whole of nation, where cyber will come in, where PLA's counter space capabilities will come in, where they have a capability to cut off our internet. They have that capability today. So the point is that, and the last thing what I must say is that General Naravane speaks about that we cannot on our own say that we will fight a two-front war. Well, it is the army who said that we will fight a two-front war and we want the capabilities for that. It is there in my book, The Last War. Please have a look. There's a chapter on that. So the point I'm making is that when our adversaries hear a thing like this, a shocking thing, that after 3 years, the man who was pushing this all along suddenly turns back and says that, look, this was all wrong, or this was putting the cart before the horse, and he says it wrong, then it does not help the nation. It shows intellectual laziness and it shows dereliction of duty. I'm really sorry to say that on this note, I have to close 2022. Thank you.